Is this thing working? Are we live? I think we're live. What's happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic whatever day you're watching this. If it's your first time hanging out at the channel, welcome. This is my little slice of YouTube, typically talking about motorcycle stuff, engine stuff related. Basically, it's a background noise generator for folks that are interested in that kind of content, but don't really want to watch what's going on. They just want something going on in the background. So that is what I am here to provide. The live show also gives me an opportunity to interact with you guys directly right over there in the chat. Go ahead and jump in if you got a question about bikes that I've got like a riding review done on, or some of the how-to videos that I put together. Go ahead and post up. Let me know if that helped you out. Also, it's my opportunity too to go over videos that sometimes don't really make it past the cutting room floor. It might be a situation where I was trying to put together a video, or I can give you some behind the scenes as far as, I don't know, videos that just didn't quite make it for whatever reason. Usually it's an audio related thing, or I fat fingered something in the process of trying to film it and lost footage, which seems to be pretty regular around here lately. So anyway, getting back to it. So as far as upcoming, the live show typically will run between 30 minutes and 45 minutes. I've been trying to pare it down just a little bit. And as long as we've got a solid feed going and interaction, I'll typically maybe stretch that a little bit longer, but usually it goes on for about 30 minutes. Now then, what all do I have kicking? What's going on? What is the latest? Well, I've got a couple of how-to videos that I'm putting together right now. One of them is a G2 ergonomics. It's a throttle tamer for the GSXR 1000, not to be confused with the quick throttle that I put on the GSXR 750s. This is actually the inverse of that. I'm going to be slowing down that throttle a little bit on the GSXR 1000, mainly because of the tune that's on that bike. What's called the ETV tuning. It's the electronic throttle valve tuning, is rather aggressive. And what that will do is it'll make the bike twitchy on throttle input. But another thing that it'll do is it's kind of an interesting thing. If in the throttle mapping, if you have that throttle map set up to where when your throttle is at half turn, your throttle body blades are about halfway open, you're actually, depending on the RPM, you're feeding the engine everything that it could possibly handle in terms of airflow. So what you do, the idea is to have a progressive style linkage that allows a little bit less throttle opening per input through like the first half of the throttle opening, and then becomes more or less 1-to-1 after that. And then towards the tail end of the actual throttle opening becomes more aggressive. And the whole reasoning behind that is, well, it works out like this. Assuming that the throttle body that you have is oversized for the airflow requirements of the engine, which is what typically is the case with these bikes. What will happen is, if you have too aggressive of a throttle opening, you'll go from, say, 20% to 40% in a very short amount of throttle twist. And what will happen in that is you go from maybe, at 20%, you may be at 35% torque, but at 40% at that RPM, well, the throttle body's open so much that the engine can just drag in as much air as it needs. And so at that point, the bike just becomes a little bit jerky, and it can actually serve, it's kind of a funny thing. You're on the bike, you roll into the throttle at what you think is half throttle, and you're really getting a ton more torque, and the bike can get a little bit light, get a little bit of a head shake to it. So anyway, what I'm doing is I'm going to be eliminating that with that throttle tamer. And then with the 750s, those are just I'm going to do a install video on the throttle tamer. It's a super easy install, but I'm sorry, with the Speedo Healer, it doesn't need a throttle tamer. It's got a G2 quick throttle. And the idea with that is to make sure that the speedo isn't just completely way off. Right now, it's pretty far off. Even with the larger rear tire on that GSXR 750, it's off by a pretty significant amount. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix that. Both 750s are going to get some windscreens, and I'm going to get the mirrors off of that gray bike, because one of the issues that I have with sport bikes is I've got well, I'm not a big fan of mirrors on sport bikes. I'll just say it right now. And I said this in a previous video too. A lot of guys go, oh, you got to have mirrors. They've always been more of a nuisance for me than anything else. So, but that's what is coming up. That's a little bit of the behind the scenes video. I wanted to bring you guys kind of along for that ride, and show you a little bit about, you know, some of the what behind the, you know, the how these videos are made, and the reason why. You know, a lot of times you'll see videos with guys and they just kind of march all the way through the video and there's never really a problem along the way. And it's because when you put together like a how-to style video, you almost have to have a dress rehearsal with it, just to make sure that, you know, you don't want to be halfway through filming something and you break a connector, right? Or you don't want to be halfway through filming something and you find out, oh, damn, I need a tool. Things like that just happen. And so I'll basically kind of do the install, and then I'll put everything back where I found it, and I'll put everything in a position where it's easy for you, the viewer, if you're going to be doing that work to your bike, where you can just kind of see everything happen and flow through. Another thing that I've done with how-to videos is I will show the afterwards, and I'll try to work it backwards. Like, this is how it looks like when you're done. Don't worry, it's going to be kind of freaky. It's going to be pulled apart. And in some cases, it's almost easier to show you the reverse process, because, you know, taking off body work and things like that can be a little bit unnerving, and it's hard to do. And it's hard to see when you're putting it back together. You can see, you know, where the tabs are, for example. And so that's why sometimes if I'm doing a project where it requires removing the body work, I'll show you me installing it. That way you'll get a better understanding when you're removing it, where the tabs are and stuff like that. Because again, it's a lot less awkward. Like when you're working on these things and you're trying to show, okay, this is how you pull this off or whatever, a lot of times it gets a little bit awkward. So anyway, that's the reason for that. But in saying that, as far as upcoming bikes, I haven't really picked any yet. I still want to get my leg over a GS 1200 BMW. I've got a bit of a thing for the adventure bikes, as you guys know, the sport utility bikes, if you will. And a lot of guys say that the GS 1200 is the end all be all. I think that there's now a GS 1300. But, you know, the thing is that, you know, I want to try to get that bike in the rotation. Oh, I may do a revisit of the Hayabusa. That's another bike that I think deserves a little bit more spotlight. And I want to ride it and bring that bike to you really from the perspective now of a little bit of time being removed between me and that bike. When I first rode the Gen 3 Hayabusa, one of the things that I took away from that experience was just how good of a bike that it is. Just in terms of, you know, the torque, the way that the bike puts power to the ground. You know, a lot of folks were a little bit, I don't know, is the right word apprehensive? They were pretty critical of the Gen 3 Hayabusa because it was, well, Euro 5 compliant, which is a big deal. And it was also, well, one of the biggest problems that guys had was that it was down on power. And, you know, I got to thinking, this is a flipping Suzuki Hayabusa. Man, how is it down on power? Is that even possible? And when I rode that bike, it was such a fun bike to ride. It was such a lively, such a happy motorcycle. And one of my biggest takeaways was, if that bike had more power on the far right-hand side of the tachometer, would I even care? And I got to think, I was like, man, I don't really think that I would. I think that you get to a certain point with a bike and it doesn't, how do I put this? You get to a certain point with a bike, in more power doesn't make it more better. A lot of times bikes that just have a very rich power output, bikes that are comfortable, bikes that are fun, that have a like a playful personality, that's really what you're looking for. And it's kind of strange because the more riding reviews that I do, one of the things that I'm noticing is which bikes that I'm more attracted to along the way, and it's rarely is it ever a bike that you might think that it would be, right? So you might think, well, I've got a GSXR 1000, I must love leader bikes. Not necessarily. Matter of fact, leader bikes can be a blast. And of the leader bikes that I have ridden, I got to say that R1 is probably at the top of the list, at least right there with the GSXR 1000. But in saying that, the leader bikes themselves, when they're stock, they're a lot of fun, or with the slip on and, just minor tweaks here and there. But if you get one that's been really put together proper, like mine is, it can be a bit more of, I'm not going to say a handful, because they're very intuitive. They're very easy bikes to ride. But what I will say about them is that compared to the Hayabusa, which is just so smooth, the leader bikes can just be a bit frantic. It's like an argument looking to happen, right? It's like a fight that just hasn't taken place yet, where the Hayabusa is just super chill and super laid back. Even with as much power as it makes, it just is not all that. It's just not an intimidating bike the way that a leader bike would be. It's weird. I don't know why, it just has that kind of vibe for me. So anyway, I had a lot of Gen 2 guys saying, oh, the Gen 2 is faster, it'll run away from a Gen 3 Hayabusa. And I'm like, damn, dude, that's great. But now we're talking about bikes that, I don't know that I would want it to be super crazy fast. So anyway, I'm going to maybe revisit that bike along the way. All right, so we're about 12 minutes in. It's time for a feed check. If you guys are out there, let me know how the feed looks. How does the audio look? Sometimes it's pretty rough, or if it's good, let me know. It's always good to hear if the feed looks good or if the audio is checking in and it's sounding good. Because doing a live show, there's nothing worse than, knowing that your feed is jacked up. Because it happens regularly. But outside of that, there's not a ton. Sam say, remember, some BMW car dealers will carry BMW bikes. Okay. You won't see, well, you might see me in a BMW dealership. But cool if they do. One of the funny things, talking about BMW motorcycles, I always forget about the S1000s. I always, for whatever reason, it's like the BMW just never checks a certain box for me. And that also kind of applies to the Aprilia RSV4. For whatever reason, it's a hell of a bike. It just, for some reason, I always forget that they exist. And it's weird too, because, I hate to say it. So the ZX10 from Kawasaki, how do I put this? The ZX10 is another bike that, for whatever reason, I just don't ever make a beeline click to that bike whenever I walk into a dealer, like a Kawasaki dealership. And I don't know why that is. Anyway, Mickey's asking, where is the rear wheel sitting on the gray bike after going down on the front sprocket? Man, it might be 3 or 4 millimeters back. It's really hard to tell visually if it even moved at all. I have, all I did was adjust it, and that's it. I mean, I adjusted it to a tight 25 millimeters. And that's it. But no, it didn't scoot back hardly at all. not in the same way that going down a tooth on the rear sprocket or two teeth on the rear sprocket would really scoot that axle back. The going down one sprocket hardly changed much of anything. Maybe, like I say, 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters at the most. Matter of fact, for you guys, I mean, whenever I do a chain measurement, this is, I'm using a ruler as kind of a stand-in. I use a micrometer, and I actually measure from the back to the backing plate, the axle carrier. I'll measure from the back of the swing arm to that axle carrier, and I will literally, I don't get within a millimeter side to side. I don't get within half a millimeter side to side. I get within the same millimeter side to side, like within the same width on that micrometer. I am super just anal about making sure that axle is exactly straight on both sides. It's kind of funny. And when I do that, I'll make a mental note of about where the millimeters are as far as how far forward or back that axle is. The further back that it is, obviously, the smaller the number is going to be on the ruler. And I want to say that it was at 32 millimeters. And when I put it back together after putting the front sprocket on there, it's at 29 and a half millimeters. So that gives you an idea. It's just a tiny, tiny amount. Which is cool, because that kind of a change is always, you wonder, like, is this going to change how the bike handles because you're moving the axle around or whatever? And I'll tell you this, I have yet to ever really pick up on a difference in handling with playing with gears. Usually because if you go one down and two up, it kind of equalize back. It'll scoot it forward, but not so much, so you just kind of don't notice a lot of that. And convert, like when I go down the GSXR 1000, I went down a tooth, which scooted the axle back just a little bit, and can't tell at all. And that's another thing. Again, the larger rear tire on the back of the gray GSXR 750. The interesting thing about having that 190/55 is that, number one, we've determined that there's no difference. Having a heavier tire or whatever, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't in terms of how the bike is going to accelerate. And it also, I cannot tell that. I mean, I kind of can tell a little bit of a difference though with how the gray bike drops into a corner and how easy it is when you're on the side of the tire to pick a line. Like, you can adjust your line pretty easily on the side of the tire with the 190/55 on the back of that GSXR 750 as opposed to the 180/55. And I know that there's a lot of guys who are going to say, well, the 180/55, it's a smaller tire. It's going to allow you to tip it in easier. It's a lighter tire and all this other stuff. And man, look, technically speaking, you're correct. But I can tell you all this, guys, everything that I thought, because Orange Crush and I, we ran the bikes. Okay. And let's not forget that the gray bike went around the blue bike at the top of, or near the top of 6th gear. Okay. So, the little bit taller tire, maybe that helped it with a little bit of a different gear. You're topping out pretty close with one, and then you're topping out close with the other one. You can maybe make that argument because it's the effective gearing ratio is less aggressive with the taller rear gear or rear tire. But here's the thing. That bike accelerates dead even with the blue bike. It'd be different if the blue bike got out and then the gray bike came around. It didn't work like that. So there's a little bit of so that misconception or that theory got shot down. And the way that bike transitions, it feels great. I honestly, I can't really tell the difference one to the next outside of the fact that the gray bike, on hard throttle input, when you're on the side of the tire and you're straightening the bike up, it won't have it doesn't have the same tendency to go slightly wide that the blue bike does. And the only reason why the blue bike does that is because I'm on the throttle so early anyway on that bike. So, that's just me playing with it. And I play with both of them the same way. And the gray bike just holds the line better under load. So there's that. Blame it on that taller rear tire if you like, but I like that combination a lot. And that's what's probably going to end up going on the blue bike. Real side, Sam's asking, have you heard of the Honda Transalp? I have done riding reviews on the Honda Transalp. So yes, and I like that motorcycle a lot, by the way. Very good. Tell you this, the Transalp 750 is a hell of a good bike, and had every chance of winning Sport Utility Bike of the Year. And for next year, it's going to be a toss-up between the Transalp and the BMW GS 850. It's going to be close. I'll put it to you like this. I mean, spoiler alert for a year from now, it's going to be real close. John's in. What's up, John? Saying hello. Hello, John. And then what are we going to do? What's next for the blue bike? So you've seen what all is going to go on the gray bike. We've got the mirror block offs with the integrated blinkers. The different windscreen's going to go on at that same time. We've got the Speedo healer coming for the gray bike. What about the blue bike? Okay, so between now and sometime to be, time to be determined later, the blue bike is going to get a 520 conversion with stock gearing. It's just going to be all 520. I'm sorry. No. Blue bike is getting one down just like the gray bike did with the 520 gearing, 520 chain. Anyway, you know where I'm going with that. Because coffee's not kicking in. And the reason the blue bike is going to get a little bit different setup. And what I will say is this, and another, behind the scenes type thing, but when the gray bike gets its Speedo healer and the mirror block offs and the windscreen, that is almost going to be a wrap for that bike. And the reason why I say that is that bike is so good, so very good, that I'm just not going to take it any further than that. The blue bike, on the other hand, 520, one down up front setup. That bike also gets a Speedo healer. That bike also, I may go back and revisit a quick shifter on that bike, only because I can give you guys some content as far as how to tune a quick shifter. But I'm really reluctant to do that on that bike because it is so freaking good without it. And I've said it over and over and over again. You know what? Screw that. Now that I'm thinking about it, I know that somebody may want to watch that, and I apologize if that's something you were looking forward to, but I've got to say, it's not. I just feel like it would kind of almost, not exactly, but maybe, I don't know. We'll see. I might take a look at that for that particular bike. It is going to be a bit more aggressive, so we'll see. But for now, I think I'm going to go ahead and leave it be with that 520 upgrade. Sam's looking for a Honda Trail, but his dealership's got the DAX 125s. I can tell you that at Stub Cycles, we've got 2 or 3 Honda Trails. It's a cool bike, by the way. I like it. I like that bike a lot. And I may start doing some mini motos. If we've got them in stock, I may start doing them. But what I'll also say is, if I do a revisit on that gray Hayabusa, I've got to be kind of careful with that. I really do need to be kind of careful with that because I am deathly afraid that gray Hayabusa may end up coming home with me. like I'm really afraid that that bike could end up coming home with me. And the reason why I say that is I'm putting a ton of work into the GSXR 1000 to make it easier to live with on the street, if you will. Okay. And again, the Hayabusa, I've got sport bike covered, I think, with the Gixxer 750s, right? The Hayabusa, how do I put this? It's just like the Gixxer 750. I view the Hayabusa almost exactly the same way as I view the GSXR 750. It's old school analog clocks. It's got a very smooth engine. The power delivery is very, it's got a rich power delivery to it. It's not frantic. It's just a really good bike. And I rode that gray bike and I was just going, ugh. I liked it so much, right? And the more I got to thinking about it, the more I thought, man, I could really get used to this thing, especially if I just wanted to go. Okay, if I just wanted to go on a longer ride, okay, full stop on that. I don't really go on longer rides though. And if I did, I've got a 750 that is fit perfectly for that. So it's like, what would I do with it? I can't do the same stuff I do with my 1000 with it. And so it would just kind of exist in the fleet, right? So anyway, I got to be careful because I've got such a crush on that bike. It's not even funny. So we do have some bikes in stock though that I am interested in. We got a CB 1100 that that I may take out, and I've also got what is it, the Kawasaki 650, that one, that the most raw, I think, of the sport utility bikes. Ben's checking in saying first sport bike was a 94 GSXR 1100. Love that bike, by the way. Been raiding eBay for all the old sales brochures and magazines. There are some things you just can't let go of. Ain't that the truth? I'll tell you what, hell of a bike. Tim's checking in. Hello from Australia. Howdy from Texas, my friend. So I'm saying, hey, B, hey, folks, new channel name. Hope y'all had an awesome new year. Yes. Hope you had an awesome new year, too. Oh, yeah, the name change. Keep forgetting about that. So, yeah, just playing around with a bit of a rebrand for the channel. B Mason has been the name since forever, and I never really branded the channel. It was never like, Mopar Mason or, something like that when I was doing the car stuff. And so, it always just kind of stayed what it was. And I got to thinking, I'm not doing car content anymore. And so to differentiate the channel, basically what I did is I just, I thought, well, let me come up with something different. And, Cyclemoto is something that it was just weird that nobody else had that name. I figured that would be a real common motorcycle channel name, or it would be a vendor name, since, it's just kind of the way that it rings out like that. And nobody had it. And I was going, I guess that's it. And then my handle is Moto Psycho. So you never know, the name of the channel may move to Moto Psycho, but it's just kind of, I don't know. It doesn't really, I don't know. That one doesn't really ring the way that I want it to. So Cyclemoto, I kind of kill it. It's kind of like, I kind of like it. I killed the other idea. It's kind of like Quasimoto, So anyway, I thought that was, I just thought it was kind of a good time to go ahead and make the switch and brand the channel so that, you can see it and go, oh yeah, he's talking about bikes, right? As opposed to there's this bald guy on my feed. Why is that? And the other reason why is I'm just having a lot more fun with motorcycle content. So, it's making it a pretty easy transition. Sovereign saying new name for a new year. Yes. Oh, Tim saying I had a Gen 2 Busa for 8 years, was the best bike I've ever owned. We'll get another Busa one day. So here's the thing. I love the Hayabusa. I'm not kidding. I cannot say enough good things about that bike just as motorcycle, you know? And one of the things about the Hayabusa that I do like is the fact that you don't have to request much out of that bike to get really good performance. And here's the thing. I know, again, the third gen is, if you want to, because here's the thing. I know all about the second gen, and that is the bike you want to make power, right? But for street riding, and let me rephrase this. In the event that you are not wide open on that bike and you're on the far right-hand side of the tack, the third gen is a better bike. It's the fueling is better. It's a smoother power delivery. And if you're shifting at like 8,000 RPM and less, you're just kind of fanning it through 3/4 throttle or whatever, it's making more power in that area. Matter of fact, the third gen, because of the longer velocity stacks, the different cams and all that, it's actually outpowering the ZX14 up to like about 8,500 RPM. And it is what it is, right? I mean, it's just a really good, really smooth bike. And I don't know that I could let my leader bike go for one, but I tell you what, I've been spending a hell of a lot of time with the GSXR 750s. And the more time I spend with the 750s, the more time I have to spend with my 1000, so that I've got an anchor to where I've got the experience to be able to ride and appreciate these other motorcycles. So I can't really get rid of my 1000cc bike, even if I wanted to, because I need it as more of a, how do I put this? I need it as a training tool, if you will, if that makes any sense. Oh, that's another thing. So I had put out, or I didn't put it out yet. I had recorded a video with the 1000, and I'm going to have to end up throwing that one into the bin, because the first part of it, you can't really hear me talking. You can't hear the audio. And it's because of the speed that I'm going. There's like certain speeds that the wind will get underneath the helmet, and it frazzles it just kind of buffets the microphone. You can imagine the kind of speeds we're talking about. And so I'm going to redo that video, but it's going to be a redo of that video after I put the throttle tamer on the GSXR 1000. And which is good. It's actually it's going to be a better format for that bike to do a video with it, because the throttle tamer is like almost mandatory for that bike now for street riding. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be talking about what really truly is the difference going leader bike versus the 750, and what all it takes to get a leader bike to where you can live with it, realistically speaking. I'm not in it. Look, if you're 25 years old and you don't mind the harsher ride, that's one thing. But man, after a while, it just wears on you, And so anyway, I'm going to be talking about what all I've done to my leader bike to get it sorted out to where it's a little bit better on the street and on the side of the tire. But I really want to do that after the throttle tamer is on that bike, because one of the key things I want to try out is, what does that bike feel like coming into carousel when I'm, coming into carousel second gear. When I shut down in second gear and I come into the brakes and I go to drop that bike over into carousel, those of you guys that have watched it know there's a bump coming right. It's literally bump. And as the bike comes up and drops, I'm dropping the bike in right after that. As I've got the bike on the side of the tire, that's where I notice just how jerky the throttle is on that 1000, even with the tune that's on it. So that's always been a bit of a point of contention for me because I didn't have these issues with the red bike, which is absolutely dialed in too. There have been times. Anyway, the red bike was absolutely dialed in with its throttle mapping. I'm just going to have to take some extra steps with this two-wheel DynoWorks tune to get it to act right, to get it to act the way that I feel like it should for street use and for track use, for that matter. And for those of you guys that may be watching and don't know, so the issue that I have with the throttle mapping on the 1000 is, again, at these partial throttle input. So I've actually got the pieces of tape right here that I use for measuring throttle twist. And the 1000 has a 35 millimeter total twist. The GSXR 750, by comparison, has 43 millimeters of total twist that you have to use to get the bike to go from idle to wide open throttle. A quicker throttle will, on the 750, only drop it down, believe it or not, to 40 millimeters. There's still a lot more throttle throw on the 750, even with a quick throttle, than the stock throttle, which oddly enough is the same throttle tube, just a different cam where it is, what the throttle's turning. Anyway, it's a significantly shorter throttle throw. The problem is if you go messing with the throttle mapping and you make it more aggressive, or you don't mess with it and it remains very aggressive from the factory, what'll happen is on corner exit, there's three things that happen. The first, which is the most frustrating for me, and this is the part that is just like, it's ruined this bike, and it's one of the reasons why I'm going the extremes and I'm going to get this thing fixed up, is, let's say you're cruising down the highway and you're in fifth gear, right? And it's a nice cool day, the bike's making a ton of power, and the suspension isn't quite warmed up yet. You're just cruising down the road, you roll into the throttle, and the bike immediately goes into a head shake. The reason it's doing that is that you're not body positioned properly for the amount of torque that you are now commanding. The suspension is a little bit cold, so it's not reacting as quickly. So instead of your rebound letting the front tire stay on the ground, you're pulling this slight little baby power wheelie, which is just enough to piss off the alignment on the front and rear, and it'll get a little head shake. Well, that also happens when everything's warmed up, and any undulations in the road as you're accelerating, the bike will actually come up a little bit and it'll get a little bit loose when it touches down. Now, that alone is enough of a reason for me to make the switch. The other reason for me to make the switch is on the side of the tire. You go to roll into the throttle and the bike would kind of get a little bit loose, because what I'm in my brain perceiving as half throttle, for example, well, that throttle is actually more like 70% or something like that. Just, I don't know what the number is, but you get the idea. And so it's like I'm giving it a lot more throttle, which makes it's upsetting the chassis. So the upset the chassis, one of two things happens. And the first thing that will happen is you'll break traction a little bit. That's not necessarily a bad thing if I'm intending on doing it, but it's not too cool when you're not. So there's that. The other thing is it'll have a tendency to, on corner exit, as I'm reposturing up and rolling into the throttle, as the bike is coming up and I'm going into the throttle, the bike will have a tendency on the side of the tire to come up a little bit. Now that alone isn't bad either. It's actually kind of fun, you know, side of the tire wheelies on corner exit. The problem is that you're on the side of the tire wheelie corner exit and you are committed now and you're not playing. I mean, you're coming into a straight and it's time to, pin it and win it. And the bike will sit down and you'll get a little bit of a head shake. You'll have to roll throttle or take an early upshift. You got to make sure that your praying mantis is in its praying mantis pose, so to speak. But there's a lot of things that having a proper throttle map or the intuitiveness of having that throttle work is what you're looking for. the thing is that the if I put it in B mode, which on the GSX-R 1000, it doesn't have rain mode, street mode, track mode, doesn't have that. It just has A mode, B mode, C mode. And all it is it's varying levels of throttle sensitivity at different positions. And it is very intuitive in B mode. The problem is that that mode isn't touched by two-wheel dyno works. In other words, they don't go in and go, okay, B mode, yeah, we need to go ahead and make that run 100% throttle out to red line. They don't do that. So, and I don't feel like taking the bike apart. I don't feel like going back and forth with a tuner, trying to get throttle mapping sorted out, because that it's subjective and you can't make it right ever. So the way to get around that is just to, you know, mechanically change up how that's going to work. Someone's asking, can't you just advance the cable? No, it doesn't quite work like that. It's still a cable actuated throttle, but it's only turning what is in essence a speed controller, if you will. It's like a rheostat, like a volume control. The more volume you give it, so to speak, the more the throttle blades are going to be open. No, it's not a Hall effect. It's just like a speed sensor. B Mason mode. Yeah, I'll tell you what, it'll with the throttle tamer, it should be a lot easier. You know, and it's going to make the bike significantly better to ride just in general. But man, I'll tell you what, if an R1 did, I've still got a big crush on the R1 too. So, but I love my Gixxer 1000. But I can tell you this, the 750s are just so much fun. The breath of fresh air that they are, it's going to be tough to get me away from either one of those bikes. Plus, here's the thing, with the 750 is a bike that's relatable to a lot of people. And what I'm finding is that the 1000 isn't as relatable so much. So, you know, I want to try to also, you know, put content out there that is applicable to folks that are, you know, watching the channel. And a lot of the data in the channel suggests that GSX-R 750 is the way that I need to keep going. The only other bike that's out there right now, and as far as bikes for the channel, I haven't picked anything for 2026. I don't know that I'm going to be adding another bike to the fleet. I don't really see anything that's really capturing my nothing's out there that's capturing my imagination. I can tell you that. The R9 has come up a few times, and the RCR 990 has come up a few times as a bike that, you know, oh, you've got to bring that into the fleet. And the problem with that, okay, so let's go ahead and address the R9 first, because it's the easiest. I just got through riding the XSR 900, which is in effect the stand-in for the R9 in terms of actual power output and performance. Here's the way I see that. The R9, because it's going to run like an XSR 900, is not the bike for me. The MT-09, the XSR 900, that bike is so good at being naked, fun, hooligan, just motorcycle bike, okay? That bike is equally as good as the Hayabusa is at being a Hayabusa, and as the 750 is at being a Gixxer 750. That's how good the MT-09 is. But that engine has no business in a sport chassis. It just doesn't. And I don't care what you say about, well, you could get this or you could get that or whatever. It doesn't matter. The R9 is never going to be able to deal with what a GSX-R 750 can throw at it. Never. It can't. I've ridden the XSR 900 now enough times to be able to tell you that if that is going to be the avatar for the R9, my GSX-R 750 with a shitty tank of gas and an uninterested me on it riding it will absolutely, positively, without a shadow of a doubt, show Suzuki ass to Yamaha face for the entire duration of a track day. It would not go a different way if I'm on both bikes. There's just not enough grunt in the R9, not enough speed, not enough outright power to be able to deal with an experienced rider on a GSX-R 750. I'm not talking about novice to novice here. Novice to novice, the R9 has the advantage. But once you've graduated past the middleweight class and you're more into leader bikes the way that I am, and by the way, DM just checked in. I may be on the hunt for an R1, bro. If this quick throttle thing doesn't work out with the Gixxer 1000, I will potentially be on the lookout for a 60th anniversary. But here's the thing. I'm having no good vibes coming from the R9 camp either. Enough for me to say, yeah, I want an R9, because everyone that I've seen that is picked up an R9 ends up flipping it. Somebody else ends up with it. And it doesn't matter what has or hasn't been done to that bike. It's just that, it's a great street bike, and it's really good at partial throttle stuff, just like its MT-09 and XSR 900 brethren. But after riding the XSR and really getting to play with it off camera, there's a reason why it won Sport Naked of the Year on my year in review. And there's a really strong reason why that engine should never have been put in that chassis. Not in the way that it is. And I'm not saying that it can't get there. In fact, it could. I'm just saying that as it sits right now, I'm just not going to be a player on that bike. So there's that. Now, what about, what about, like the Hayabusa, for example? Well, again, like I was saying earlier, love that bike. I just don't really I ride differently than that Busa is meant to be ridden, I guess. I'm not saying that you can't put a Hayabusa on the side of the tire. You damn well can. I know that because I did a little bit with a gray bike, with the gray Hayabusa at the shop. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. The bikes that I like the most are the bikes that, speak really the most to what I enjoy doing with a motorcycle. And the whole reason why I'm kind of leaning into trying to find a 60th anniversary R1 is, number one, it's a gorgeous bike. But when I was playing around with that 2019, let me put it to you like this. The 2019 damn near came home with me. Not once, but twice. And this has happened now. This has happened. Okay, this same thing played out. The Royal Enfield, the Continental GT, and the V-Strom 800. This happened with the R1 too. I literally was heading up to the shop and that bike sold. And it was like, what the hell? So I was heading to the shop I was going to go ahead and tell Hunter, look, go ahead and wrap up the R1. And we're just going to wrap up that 2019 and take it home. That's going to be the new project bike for the channel. And they sold it. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. That bike sat there. Nobody wanted it. And then it sells. That is kind of crazy. So if you ever go back and you watch my videos with that R1, the R1 is what started the whole brake test, by the way. Like, watch this thing go, and I'm on the back lot and I'm playing with it. And I didn't get a chance to totally take out wheelie control, put everything to zero, or do anything like that. I didn't really get a chance to play with it too much. But I ended up leaving with that bike for a little bit after I wrapped everything up, and I freaking started to fall in love with it because the engine is so much smoother. It's equal to the GSX-R 1000 in terms of total power output. But it's so much easier to ride. It's so much smoother to ride. But here's the whole thing with the R1. It is a big Gixxer 750. I'm sorry, but everybody that I've also talked to that owns an R1 and that also owns a 750, they just go, look, it's smooth like the 750. It's got the front end feel of the 750, which it does, and it doesn't have the weird, buzziness that the Gixxer Thou can sometimes have, keeping in mind that I have to ride a significant distance before I get to where I can actually do the stuff that I do off camera. There's a lot that I have to do that does not work well with the GSX-R 1000. And part of that is in the suspension tuning, where I just can't seem to get the GSX-R 1000 to chill out a little bit. Where the R1 just felt a lot smoother. I would like to spend more time with an R1 before I, just go ahead and fully commit to something like that. But I ain't kidding. That 60th anniversary, man, has got me really thinking. So, yeah, that R1, man, it's just so good. Plus, it sounds amazing. Oh, it sounds amazing. And here's the other twist with the hearing that I have in my right ear, which is like I can hear satellites flying overhead. The lower tone is easier on me. It's less of that higher pitch distraction, which the 750s do not bother me in the least. But for whatever reason, that 1000 sometimes will if I've been on it for a long time. So overall, I mean, I'm not really trying to rationalize flipping my GSX-R 1000 for an R1. I don't think I have to do that because the R1 speaks for itself in a lot of different ways. But damn, if that bike isn't just as freaking, it's silky like tiramisu, dude. I'm telling you, it is just that good to ride. So, but DM saying the R1 is a big Gixxer 750. It is. So check this out, that 2019 that I was playing with. And again, I didn't take off everything on the bike, but I did have it dialed down. I think is about as far as I could with all the modes on one. The only thing I didn't like about it is it was still a little bit intrusive. I think that I would have to I got to figure out a way. I don't even know how to work the electronics on it, but I'd have to turn wheelie control all the way off, I think. And I would have to play around with the settings on it. That's why I would want to play with one a little bit, because what I like about the Gixxer is you put it in A1 and you just do whatever. I mean, there is no intervention with that bike. So, how do I say this? The R1 has better front end feel, and the front end feel on the R1 to me felt a lot like a GSX-R 750. Where the GSX-R 1000 feels a hell of a lot. In fact, it's practically identical to the 636. And one thing that I discovered about me is that I really prefer nose heavy bikes. I prefer the quicker turn in, and I prefer the front end feel significantly more with the way that my body position is, with the way my brain's wired or whatever, where I guess some people don't like that. Like a lot of guys don't like a lot of front end feel. They want a more balanced feeling bike. Well, I'm not one of those guys. I like a bike with a bit more front end feel. I feel like my brain needs the extra input that the R1 gives for me to feel comfortable when I'm black. I don't just like, pick a line and trust the tire. It's like, eh. But anyway, the R1 is really that good. And so I don't know. I love my 1000. I love the X-Star bike though. And it's the bike that I wanted and I got it. So I can't really complain too much, but here I am complaining. Johnny 5, need more input. Correct. DM saying R1 has finesse, but that growl is awesome. Yes, it is. And I love the sound of it. And here's the other thing. The R1 is funny because, guys, if you've never ridden an R1 and you've only ridden 4-cylinder bikes or whatever, the R1 is unique because the way that it runs, it feels a lot like you're on a bike with two parallel twins. You don't feel a buzziness. The vibration that you feel is like a lower frequency with that bike. And so it's less taxing to ride. It's just weird. There's a reason why so many guys have so many guys that have R1s also have Gixxer 750s. It's kind of a weird thing that you'll find. It's like it's a weird, like, you know, dogs and cats living together over here. It's just kind of weird that that's how it works out. The guys that I've talked to anyway that love them some R1 also love them some Gixxer 750. Oh, Sovereign's got to go take care of the kitty. Gotcha. So yeah, guys, that's kind of where we're at with the channel right now. Not, like I say, not a whole lot of news, but not a lot of, you know, we haven't, the year really hadn't really gotten rolling yet. DM saying the R1 is not as fast as a GSX-R 1000, but it's not all about that. I like the playfulness of the Yamaha. Well, here's the thing. The R1 with exhaust and a tune, there's not a lot that separates the two. I'll be honest with you. I'm not really a size queen when it comes to total power output and roll race and all this other stuff. But should that contest come to light, they're going to be very, very close. It's just that the R1 maybe doesn't feel as fast because it doesn't feel as frantic. And I like that about the R1 because it kind of turns the volume down a little bit. And I feel like I could concentrate a little bit better with the R1. I'm telling you, guys, I almost didn't bring that bike back. That's how much I like the R1. And it was going to be so while I was out, I had to put gas in it. And there was a part of me that almost called Hunter and just said, "Look, get the paperwork together. I'm putting gas in the bike right now. I'm not going home without it." Tim's checking said, "As I've said, I'm 6'7", so it's Suzuki for me. I don't fit on R1. CBRs and Cowies. Suzukis are much more roomy." So that's a great point. The Suzuki is going to give you more room all the way around. You're going to have a little bit more of a spread out rider triangle on the Suzuki. And one of the things about like the GSX-R 750, the cool thing is that you can either drop the rear sets or you can scoot them back. And I've scooted my rear sets back on the 750s and it's helped out a ton. But if you're a shorter guy or gal, you can leave them in the stock position and it's fine. If you're taller, you can drop them. I know a lot of guys drop them and just leave them there. Whether they're taller or shorter, it's just a little bit more comfortable for them. So there's ways to make that bike more comfortable for sure. And that's the thing. I mean, it's kind of funny that, you know, these bikes are so versatile. Like we're talking about the GSX-R middleweights, the 600A and the 750. But yeah, I'm gonna have to revisit the R1 thing, and we'll see how that all ends up shaping up over the course of this year. Because DMs, you're exactly right. Look, you can't keep playing the power card. You really can't. It gets to a point with these bikes where the power becomes the only selling point, right? And the thing is that nobody really does it better than Suzuki when it comes to outright power. It's really hard to beat that variable cam GSX-R 1000 engine. It just makes power everywhere. And the funny thing about the Suzuki is if you're not really running it to the limit, it's it's a big old pussy cat. The problem though is big old pussy still got kitty got claws, right? And so that's where the Gixxer can be a little bit, yeah, it's just tiresome. One of the things that I found with the GSXR 1000 is that it it is frustratingly good at what it does well. It does not, again, like I'll keep saying, nobody does outright power the way that Suzuki does. Nobody punches above their waist or the waist. Nobody punches above their weight class like Suzuki does, if you will. The running joke is always that the Suzuki feels like it's 100 cc's larger. Like somebody check the engine. It's not, but it's because of that nature of that bike that becomes the overwhelming characteristic. Just a bit of a frantic power output, especially if the tune isn't exactly dialed in for the throttle tuning. But the R1, on the other hand, the character of that engine, a little bit different. The character of that engine is, it's so silly. It does everything in a very smooth, like Billy D. Williams kind of way, you know, not in a Bobcat Goldthwait kind of way. How's that for an 80s reference for you old heads out there? So anyway, but that's the update, guys. That's what's going on with the channel. Again, be on the lookout for those how-to videos. I'm looking forward to bringing those to you. Be on the lookout for that that ride along video when I take the 1000 out after I put that quick throttle on the thing. I'm kind of, I don't know if I can't be any more excited about that. That is the last bastion of hope for that bike, though. I will say that. And then also be on the lookout for that Speedo Healer video that I'm going to be putting out for the 750. And then as the year progresses, the Blue Bike will get, as the budget allows, the Blue Bike's going to get the 520 conversion, probably not going to get a quick shifter. I still feel like the 750s just don't benefit the way that they should, maybe, or maybe they could from a quick shifter. I might be wrong, and who knows? I may be eating my own words on that. I may go back and try it out, but I don't know. We'll see. I know Tim tried with his, and it's like, it's a novelty, but I think that novelty wears off. Because the 750 is just so good, and you preload that shifter and it says click, 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 and there's nothing to it. I mean, it's just, 750. How are you? So good. DM said, I still want an Aprilia Amelia factory. Awesome bike. Awesome bike. You know, speaking of like always wanted bikes, and I don't know, out of nowhere, this is kind of weird too. Out of nowhere, this bike's been showing up in my freaking, suggested feeds. It's like, it's weird. I didn't know that, that computers can read your brain, but the Tri-9 Ducati is still one of those bikes that I have always wanted, like big time, and they're cheap right now. But I always wanted to Tri-9 Ducati. And anyway, I've been having like 3 or 4 videos come up lately with that bike. So anyway, Sovereign saying we're streaming at 1080. Really? We're streaming at 1080? Nice. I like it. About time this thing was streaming, right? Huh? Am I right? Am I right? So, but again, there something like that, like a more vintage style bike, I don't know that I can take on another project like that. I've got to maybe do some work to the Daytona dad's bike. I don't know. We'll see. That bike, I just need to keep it running, keep it maintained, and I really don't want to have to pull that bike apart if I don't have to. But it does need some fork work, and so anyway, we'll see how that all ends up going. But with that, guys, I got to go ahead and wrap it up. A little bit over an hour tonight, so very cool. Want to thank each and every one of you guys for hanging out with me. Love each and every one of y'all. Could not do this without you guys. Happy New Year. And so listen, get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. Tim saying, got to get back to it. It's 2 p.m. Wednesday. Have a good one. See you, Tim. Have a great one, my friend. But with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Y'all take it easy.